The president's December 19th tweet galvanized domestic violent extremists, including members of the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, and organized militia groups. These individuals began organizing to come to the Capitol in large numbers with the specific intent to use violence to disrupt the certification of the election during the joint session.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Major Garrett. January 6th committee member Jamie Raskin, Congressman, Democrat of Maryland, joins me now. So, Congressman Raskin, I believe the public, certainly some journalists, myself included, thought there might be more names in the referrals today. Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, will they be part of a referral message from the committee in days hence?
Well, those people you mentioned, Major, and thank you for having me, are all very much part of our report. What you heard from us today were those individuals where the committee feels we have an overwhelming and abundant amount of evidence to justify a criminal referral to the Department of Justice, which isn't to say those others are not themselves culpable, but because a lot of people refused to testify or took the Fifth Amendment, we just didn't have the same level of detail in the evidence that we had for Donald Trump and for John Eastman.
So for those who are thinking, should I consider the committee's assessment of Rudy Giuliani and Mark Meadows to be in a different basket than John Eastman and Donald Trump? You're saying they are culpable, but the evidence gathered is clearer and, to use your word, more compelling for the first two than Meadows and Giuliani.
Well, just the evidence that's available to our committee, the Department of Justice will have access to a lot more evidence and a lot more prosecutorial tools than we have access to with the limited evidence available to us, given our investigative resources. I mean, there's just no comparison between what the Department of Justice has and what we have. But nonetheless, we were still able to assemble lots of evidence, some of which just seemed overwhelming to the committee in particular cases. And then in others, we basically say to the Department of Justice, please do your job and check it out, because it may indeed lead there. But, you know, I've got no doubt, Major, that none of this would have happened or taken place absent the will of Donald Trump to try to seize the presidency and overthrow the 2020 election. He was absolutely the motor force behind the entire thing. And I don't know that there's anybody in the country who believes any of this would have happened had Donald Trump just done what every other president has done in history and said, I accept the results of the election.
As you know, Congressman, the evidence you have generated, you and the committee, was not in a legal sense subjected to the adversarial process. That's one of the complaints some Republicans have about the Select Committee and its overall organizational structure. But you're deeply experienced in not only constitutional law, but the practice of law. Do you believe, if even subjected to an adversarial defense attorney approach, the evidence against John Eastman and former President Trump should lead to an indictment?
Well, let's start with this, Major. Any investigation that the Congress engages in is not subject to the adversarial system of prosecution, defense, two sides, as in any adjudicative context. So that's what it means to be the congressional branch. We do research, we do investigations, and we publish our findings. Our committee was a bipartisan committee. The vast majority of our witnesses were Republicans. And the truth is that I've never seen really such an open and shut case of what happened. This is not exactly an Agatha Christie mystery. We know exactly who done it and why he did it and how he tried to go about doing it. If there's another story out there or 10 other alibis or explanations, by all means, bring it on. We didn't encounter any of them in the course of talking to all of these Republicans who were in Donald Trump's administration, who were in his cabinet, who were in his White House, who were in his family. Everybody told the same story, essentially. So obviously the adversarial system will apply in the event that Donald Trump and John Eastman were to be prosecuted by the Department of Justice. And at that point, they would be able to explain maybe how I don't know, Rudy Giuliani was really responsible, or they would say Antifa really did it, or whatever, defense they would want to concoct, that would be subject to cross-examination and the rigors of the judicial process.
So the referral on delaying a congressional proceeding, others have been prosecuted for that. That seems to be pretty straightforward. Many were surprised, Congressman, about the addition of the insurrection charge. Do you believe that is something that could be prosecutorially met? That is to say, holding the President of the United States accountable for that? And work us through how the committee came to that decision, because the expectation was 3 referrals, not 4.
Yeah. First of all, it's interference with a government proceeding, a federal government proceeding, not a judicial proceeding. And of course, the peaceful transfer of power in the joint session of Congress called for by the 12th Amendment is such a federal proceeding. But on the insurrection point, there are 3 different ways you could prove culpability under that section. And one is you show that there's incitement to insurrection. Another possibility is you show that there's assisting insurrection, and another is you show giving aid and comfort to insurrectionists, and you only have to show one. But in this case, all 3 are clearly present. In the case of Donald Trump, he clearly incited the violent insurrection with dozens of statements he made over weeks and days and hours leading up to the attack, including "we have to fight like hell. If you don't fight like hell, you won't have a country anymore." When there's fraud involved, there are a whole different set of rules apply. We don't give up, we don't surrender, and so on. So there's very clearly incitement, and incitement that fits even within the contours of constitutional law. There's deliberate incitement in a way that's calculated to create imminent lawless action. That's precisely what Trump did. Secondly, though, he assisted the insurrectionists. One way of knowing that is thinking about that tweet he sent out at 2:24 p.m. when he knew that the riot had overtaken the Capitol. He knew that we'd been driven out of the House and the Senate. He knew that the vice president was fleeing. And instead of calling the Joint Chiefs of Staff or the Secretary of Defense or the National Guard or the DC Police or the Capitol Police, he sent out a tweet saying Mike Pence did not have the courage to do what needed to be done. In other words, he further assisted the insurrectionists by inflaming and exacerbating the situation. And finally, of course, he gave aid and comfort to the insurrectionists on that day, repeatedly throughout the day, especially when he said, "You're very special, I love you, never forget this day," and so on. But he's continued to do that, including dangling the prospect of a mass pardon of all of the convicted violent insurrectionists if he gets back into office. So all of that shows that although you only need to show that he violated one prong of this statute, he violated all 3 of them.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, a member of the January 6th Select Committee, thank you very much.